Mark Jeffrey is partner at Stillcore Capital, one of the largest funds inside of Bittensor. Today, I'm talking to him about some of the big updates on Bittensor. There's been a lot that's happened in a very short period of time, and Bittensor, right now being the largest AI cryptocurrency on the planet, is one of the most important cryptocurrencies in general, if not the most important one, to the AI narrative for cryptocurrency. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I recently went ahead and looked at one of your reports. It was the state of subnets. Now, as I know it, you're pretty much one of the biggest experts in subnets. You're always on subnets. You're always doing your research. And so on it, what was big for me was like, you haven't seen any subnets that have quote unquote crossed the chasm yet. And I thought that was really interesting because when we first talked, we talked all about how we were going to have these subnets that were going to start being profitable, how we're going to get this new era of subnets on Bittensor. What have you kind of seen since then on Bittensor? Are you starting to see more subnets pick up the quote unquote gates to the chasm? Do you think they're finding the keys, or is they still a little bit lost here?
Yeah, so let's define, right? So when I say crossing the chasm, in my mind, just sort of to put numbers on it, I think of it as a subnet which the market cap of the subnet tokens becomes worth $1 billion or more, right? And that's the circulating supply, not just sort of all the tokens. So, and you know, we're very far away from that, right? Our most valuable subnet has a market cap of roughly 100 million, right? It kind of depends on where you look, but you know, let's call it 100 million. Nobody's gone to that $1 billion mark, and nobody's got really significant customer traction and revenue. But you know, since the last time we've talked, yes, there's been a lot of motion in that direction. So the subnet revenue deals and the subnet, like the traction and basically the march towards that is moving very fast now. Whereas before, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know when this is going to start, but the ants are now marching. Like with like 10, maybe 15 of the subnets, I feel really good about. So yeah. So I think, and when I say crossing the chasm, by the way, there's a famous book by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm, where he talks about how tech companies get traction in from sort of zero. It's 0 to 1. It's just basically another expression of the Peter Thiel 0 to 1 thing, right? But it's like, how do you go from sort of nobody doing nothing that nobody believes to, oh my God, you're a hero? And of course, it was obvious this was going to happen in retrospect, right? There's like a little bit flip that has to happen, and I would say we haven't seen the bit flip yet, but I think we're well on our way now.
And who's helping us get to that big flip moment? What subnets are really pushing the envelope these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I mean, I would start with, and it's sort of a most hated subnet in a way, because I'm not cheering for sort of the old favorites. Well, I still am cheering for Shoots and some of the older favorites as well. I love them. I love what they're doing. But NG came out of sort of nowhere, from sort of from Stryker and a guy named Ning. And Stryker has famously been sort of a, Debbie Downer for a while on a lot of subnets. And until finally he decided to stop being negative and flip positive and went, okay, you know what? I'm going to just build one and show everybody. And the first thing he built was a inference subnet, and they're offering Earth's frontier inference. So, you know, kind of the equivalent of Fable, right? But expressed as Kimi K3, expressed as DeepSeek Flash, expressed as GLM 5.3, right? These are now sort of world-class inference engines, and they're offering that open source inference on commodity hardware provided by miners, some of them in China, so very cheap power. And so they're basically able to offer as good as Fable inference for 1/6 the cost, right? That's insane. And that is something like, I don't think well, first of all, we didn't know that Kimi K3 was going to be able to match Fable within like a week or two of it launching, right? So that right there, and there's been a lot of interest, right? If you go into their Telegram, they're very upfront about what they're doing and what the revenue deals look like that they're sort of chasing down, and it's very significant. So they, you know, if there is a voracious and unending appetite on Earth for cheap inference, right? Everyone's complaining that their inference bills, Anthropic's charging me too much. My Claude credits, I blew through them in a week, right? So not only you're capped, the performance is degraded. Some people are reporting that, right? So there's a lot of unhappiness with sort of the current state of affairs with the centralized guys. NG is like, hey, we're the 99-cent store for world-class inference. That's a big
Yeah.
deal, right? So that's one.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you're essentially saying they're providing what the big boy models are providing at a sixth of the cost you would normally pay.
Yeah.
And so my question is, why aren't the big boys doing what NG is doing? Why wouldn't they just copy them?
Yeah, well, I mean, they got a little genius guy named Ning, who actually is the guy who owns and runs the subnet, and he figured out how to make these open source inference engines work on 5090s, right? Which is it's a class of machine that costs like 100K, right? Versus the thing it's supposed to run on, which is $1 million machine. And so he figured out how to make it work on commodity hardware, which is proprietary to him. Like he does that little secret is not widely known.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then plus they basically through Striker they have a lot of relationships with people who have access to cheap power, right? So they've recruited these people and these entities, a lot of them in China with cheap power. Not all of them in China, but a lot of them are in China, and the power there is like 1/4 the cost of what it is anywhere else. So cheap machines and cheap power, free world class inference engines equals 99-cent store for world class inference.
They just go to the cheapest place possible. I remember reading something during the Iran conflict that it was like a bunch of people in Iran are mining Bitcoin because it's really cheap. The electricity there is really cheap. So is the idea we just go to all these places that are in extraordinarily cheap and just get compute from there when these American companies can't do that? Is that kind of the idea?
Well, I mean, you bring up Bitcoin. I think that is the right thing to bring up because anytime you have a question about Bittensor, the right answer I found is like, oh, let's go back to Bitcoin. Let's see what they
Yeah.
did, see how they solved. So, so the reason why people were mining Bitcoin in Iraq or whatever is because there was stranded energy there, right? Energy which was cheaply produced but couldn't really be used for anything else. Like a lot of people don't understand this, but when you produce energy, you have to like use it right away, right? Like people think we've got like batteries we can fill up with it like forever, but our battery tech is actually not that good. So the energy rots unless you use it right away, basically. So if you can get access to stranded energy um, very cheaply, right? It's either going to go to waste completely, or they'll sell it to you for real cheap because they weren't going to use it anyway, right? Um, so if you can find something like that, that is a great place to put inference engines, and that's what Bitcoin did. And Bittensor also is very good at utilizing stranded energy, stranded GPU, and stranded talent. So it replicates what Bitcoin did, but within the realm of AI, and that's not just for inference; that's for a lot of different things, right? But yes,
Yeah, and so why can't someone just go ahead and make a decentralized website where they allow people to rent compute from China without Bittensor? What advantage does NG have for being on Bittensor specifically?
yeah. So again, let's go back to Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So that's always the answer. So the reason, so basically, what did Bitcoin do? Bitcoin marshaled Earth's CPU and cheap electricity, and basically the miners are donating that, right? Like they pay for that out of their pocket, right? It's not like it's subsidized by the Bitcoin Corporation or something like that. They're paying for it themselves. Why? Because they want a chance to win Bitcoins, right? You win Bitcoins if you win the contest. Why do you want that? Because you think Bitcoins will go up in value, right? It's an ownership layer to this phenomenon of digital gold, right? Whatever you want to believe Bitcoin is. So if you believe in that narrative, then you want to accumulate as many Bitcoins as possible. Now, if you did this in like 2011, 2012, oh my God, you made out like a bandit, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's been shown to work very well once, right? So same is true here. So if you want to own a piece of an up and coming world class inference engine and you want to get at the ownership layer, then you will mine Engie with your GPU and cheap electricity. Now it's a bet. You might be wrong, right? Or you might just farm and dump those tokens right away. You can do that too. A lot of people did that with Bitcoin. So there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong with sort of doing both. Like hang on to some, farm and dump the rest, right? So, but the fact that there's this ownership layer in a protocol, you can own a piece of this growing thing. That's very attractive to a lot of people. So it's working great. And the miners are working their asses off, right? Like they really are. And you can see it because I've tried to mine on multiple subnets. It's really hard. And I succeed for like, a day or two. and then the contest gets harder and the competition gets more fierce, and I get kicked out like every time. So I've seen this firsthand, right? Like there's a lot of interest in mining this stuff.
Yeah, I tried doing it with IOTA for a bit on my MacBook, and it took me like 2-3 days, and I was making no money off of it. First
Yeah.
day making money, second day practically breaking even, third day shut it off because it just gets so competitive for these services. So you're saying only 5090s is what they're using right now from mostly China? Like, could I mine with my 4090 if I wanted to?
I think you can. So I have to. I know for sure 5090s. I think
Yeah.
you can use 4090s, but I'm not positive. So, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, because I remember hearing something about like these data centers need to use the same exact mega computers in order to mine. So you'd need a cluster of 5090s working with other 5090s. They wouldn't like be compatible with
Yes,
4090s.
that I do know. So they are able to create clusters of the 5090s. So you would have to you can't mix and match 4090s with
Yeah.
5090s with the magic sauce that Ning has mixed up for the miners of 53. So
That is, one day we will, very soon, probably. Did you see the tweet today from OpenAI? They were like, we're going to have AGI by the end of the year.
yeah,
You saw it? What do you think? What are you thinking?
I don't
IPO
know.
numbers?
I mean,
Are they trying to pump it?
I think probably at this point they're trying to pump. So
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
I do think there's a lot of, there's a bit of Wizard of Oz going here with those guys, and I think it's, you know, they're, I mean, if you're them, right, here's what the world looks like. You come out with you're like, and now introducing our new world class inference engine, and then like 2 weeks later, like it comes out for free. Somebody else
Yeah,
is
no one cares. Yeah.
right, and you're like, our total addressable market is $30 trillion. And meanwhile, the same thing that you offer is being offered for free, or 1/6 off from Engie. Kind of, you know, you could run it yourself if you want, right? Like you could set it up, and so the inference is free. So, so that's pretty grim, right? You don't really have a moat, so you have to come up with something else. Now, at the same time, your revenue is going crazy because most of the world, like they're buying it from Anthropic and OpenAI because those are the brand names, those are the guys in the news, and most of the purchasing is going on from people who are just reading the mainstream news, right? So they don't know about Engie, but I don't think that situation is going to last forever, right? Because one of them is going to figure it out, and they're going to be like, "Hey, so I started using this Engie thing. It's like a sixth off, or it's like 5/6 off. It's 15%, right? Did I do my math right? I think it 15%, 15% of the
About
price,
there, about there.
right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're spending money on inference at scale, holy shit, you're definitely going to eventually find your way to Engie, like in less than a year, probably, and they're all going to start telling each other. So I think if you're the big boys, you got to start waving your arms about something else in order to keep the interest up for your IPO, right? Just my opinion, but that's what I think. That's what I see.
Yeah. I mean, they're projecting that apparently Anthropic's IPO is going to be larger than SpaceX's. That's like the big talk in the AI world now. They were saying, so SpaceX originally had their TAM, that's their total addressable market, their total market at like $20 trillion. And I think 96% of it was AI. Now Anthropic is coming out and saying, we've got a $30 trillion market here. It just feels like the numbers are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they have to do that because essentially they're like hyper subsidizing everything that they're doing. Like if you're on a $200 plan, you're getting thousands of dollars of value right now on Anthropic. No way that's sustainable at all. And I've always found the most sensible use case for Bittensor is, like you said, subsidizing these things by having people mine from all over the world and fronting the cost. At some point or another, they're not going to be able to subsidize. There's no way the printer just keeps going forever. And so when do you think that moment comes when people just say, I'm sick and tired of these Anthropic prices. I'm going to go over to the open source, open model world and just do it there at a fraction of the price? Do you think it's happening this year, next year?
I think in under a year it happens. So I can't predict like what you know, I do think that I do think when the shift happens, it happens fast. It looks like it's not going to happen, and then all of a sudden, like everybody's talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, I'd say like 2 months ago, if you said open source AI is going to win this race, everyone would have laughed at you, right? That was not the conventional wisdom. And then KMK, you know, DeepSeek came out, then KMK 3, then GLM 5.3, right? And then DeepSeek Flash, right? Like all these things in rapid succession, which more or less were the equivalent of the frontier models that are publicly available, and all, so it just sort of nullified that entire narrative that it was impossible for open source AI to be as good or better, right? It just got smashed to pieces. So I think, and so now everybody's like, oh yeah, open source is going to win, And now there's talk about banning open source AI, right? Because if you have no moat, the way to recreate your moat is to get government to make a fake moat for you, right? So I think that's the game that those guys are playing, right? And then the other sort of tool they have is like, well, you haven't seen the super duper AI that we've got in the lab in the chocolate factory, right? It's
Yeah.
like 5 million times what you guys just don't know, right? And maybe they do. I mean, they've coughed up miracles before, so it's possible, but maybe they don't. And maybe this is just more chocolate factory, Wizard of Oz hand wringing or hand waving. So I don't know, but I suspect them of that because of that reason.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I had the miracle, I probably would have already released it and cashed in on it. We saw Moderna's stock spike a hell of a lot
Yeah.
as a
Well,
result
there's
of the
some rumors
cancer
about some.
research.
There are some rumors about some new models coming out soon from the big boys. So, but I think this. I think people are less excited by the new models, right? Like I think the new models are exciting in terms of one of the new ones might crack some biotech thing, right? Might
Yeah.
cure cancer, right? So we're starting to see things like that. And by the way, I think some of the more exciting subnets that we have in Bittensor are biotech, right? So we've long had Nova, which is hunting pharmaceutical molecules using a Bittensor subnet, and now more recently we have Minos, which is providing a mutation detector, which is like an application on top of AI that uses AI. So and because they're using brains, they've basically been able to marshal the best talent from around the world to compete for their subnet tokens. So they're able to outcompete all of their centralized analogs, and which is very like that's also pretty new, right? They've got 256 people in their product department, right? They have 256 miners. You can't hire 256 people for a startup biotech company. You don't have enough money, probably,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
So, and because it's a competition where only the best get anything, they're all 256 are working real hard to one up the other guy, right? So the which is exactly like again like Bitcoin, right? Everybody's trying to outdo everybody else with better ASICs, more power, more machines, right? And so the contestonomics really lends itself towards building better products.
Have we seen any big developments come from that in the
Well,
Tau
I mean,
ecosystem?
nobody's crossed the chasm yet, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think with Minos, they recently announced a paper that they wrote with OpenAI. So so basically what that tells me is that OpenAI is paying attention to biotech, and they've been they and other AI companies have been very open about they think the next big wave is maybe not letting their best frontier model out of the cage, but going after some of these applications themselves, right? To do that, they're going to partner with the experts building those applications. One of those experts, recognized by OpenAI, is a Bittensor subnet, Minos 107, right? So that's pretty significant. That tells me that like serious people take what we're doing seriously, right? So, and I know there's a big conference coming up where they're going to present the paper in October. I think I expect big things from Minos because they're very serious people. They seem to really know what they're doing. So, but yeah, they're not worth $1 billion in market cap yet. So it's
Yeah.
still kind of early days, right? So
But at that market cap, and what is Minos at? Let's check real quick. So Minos right now is at a $21 million market cap. Realistically, what $21 million company can get 256 people to go ahead and constantly research for a solution to the problems that they have? It's impossible to find. Impossible
it's
to find.
crazy, right?
And
Like
so
a lot
you're
of
able
people,
to do that on BitTensor.
yeah,
Yeah.
the cost efficiency of your money is insane, like literally insane. It's a giant force multiplier. Basically, instead of hiring a product department, you build a subnet. You'll probably spend roughly 1/10 of what you would have spent hiring people, and you'll get massively better results at the same time because you'll have 256 people working for you for a tenth of the cost. Now you do have to probably spend some money buying your own subnet tokens off the market and burning them to keep your subnet happy, right? Because they want to see the price of their tokens that they're all fighting for going up. So you have to basically do something with the revenue that comes in to keep that token price rising. Again, just like Bitcoin, it's exactly the same thing, right? So there is a cost, but you'll happily pay it because you can pay 1/10, or you can pay full price for a lesser product. That's your decision as a company.
Yeah, and the higher that they go, the more money that they're able to distribute, so the better the talent that they get,
Correct.
sensibly.
Once it
So
gets
it's like
going,
this
the flywheel
flywheel.
just
Yeah,
rolls. Yeah.
100%. Okay, so we've got into a state in Bittensor where it feels like you said, we haven't crossed the chasm, but there have been a lot of updates recently. Over the past few months since we've talked, we've had, let's see over here, we've had conviction, we've had staking updates, and I think this like version 440 update on subnets, whereas the top 32 subnets are now making more than the rest of them, essentially. They're making
Yes.
increasingly more than they used to. I'm going to kind of give you the floor here. What update do you think is most important for Tau? And do you think it's a good thing for the ecosystem or a bad thing for the ecosystem, all these updates happening in such a short period of time?
I think it's a good thing for the ecosystem because I feel like the purpose of the updates is to increase the efficiency of all of Bittensor as a contest within contests within contests, ferocious, the most ferocious form of capitalism. And basically, what Const has been doing has been tightening down the screws on the competitions to make the competitions more ferocious, right? At the same time, there have been some inefficiencies where, for example, with this latest update, the 440 update you just referenced, previous to it, there are some people who stake Tau in root, right, to earn, I forget what it is, like 5% APY,
Yeah.
whatever it is, 6%, 7%. Um, and that's nice, but you're not really helping the ecosystem in any meaningful way because you're not adding intelligence to which subnet should be getting the most emission rewards of new Tau produced by the chain, right? You're not providing value. You're just a lazy scumbag root staker, right? So, which I think has been okay up until this point, but now you're being forced to provide value. You must choose. If you want yield, great. You got to earn it. You got to pick the right subnet, right? And so that it's forcing people to bet on subnets to get the right yield. Now, what was happening before to provide that root APY is that when emissions occurred, the chain itself was selling some portion of the subnet tokens with every block for Tau, so that it would have Tau to give to the root stakers for their yield, right? Which the net effect of that is it punished anyone who was holding subnet tokens. The chain was working against you. It would be like as if the Federal Reserve printed money to bet against everyone in the stock market, right? Right.
Yeah,
It's
that
just
doesn't make
like
any sense.
you're just like that feels terrible, right? Like
Yeah.
why is the Federal Reserve just raining on me all the time, right? Raining rocks on my head. So that's what was happening, and so that is structurally speaking. So now that has been removed, and instead of a net negative of flow into these subnets, which I think is one of the reasons why the market caps are so ridiculously low compared to the potential and even the current achievements of a lot of these AI companies whose analogs have valuations in the billions of dollars, while our companies, our subnets, are sort of valuated in the 5 million to 100 million range. Like it's actually absurd that it's so low in many cases. In some cases not, but in many cases it is, right? And part of the reason why is because the chain was sort of working against everyone. Now, as of 440, the polarity of that has been reversed. The chain is now delegating, is now doing buys, right, of the best and the most valuable subnets. So it is now working with everyone. It's like subsidizing. It's investing. It'd be like the Federal Reserve was investing alongside the best investors in the world, right? And saying, "Oh, these are the best companies as chosen by you. Great, I'm going to invest in those with these new dollars that I've printed." Right. So very different dynamics. So I think it sort of takes the chain off of our necks.
Okay, so now we have this big update. You said around 10 to 15 of these projects are really groundbreaking. They're really pushing the envelope forward. I remember back in April, you were like, we have 20 projects that are just useful in general, that they might do something at some point.
Yeah.
Do you think at this stage we have 32 projects that are actually producing results that we should care about?
Yeah. I think there's 20 roughly that are
So about the
producing results
same.
we should care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's roughly the same. And since the last time we've talked, they're producing more and better results, each one of them, right? So Targon Subnet 4, which provides private inference, mostly for enterprises, They've been doing a lot of buybacks and burns. They're producing a bunch of revenue now that is pretty significant. Um, Same thing with Shoots. Shoots is doing it. You know, it has been an old. You know, Shoots used to serve up most of Open Router back when they used to serve up free models. But then they realized that wasn't going to make them money, so they started serving up only paid models, which I think was the right thing for them to do.
100%.
Right, but it also decreased their footprint on Open Router. But they're still. But that said, they're still a very significant player. And we have our own Open Router competitor now, and this is new, Subnet 28 GM, and it has an A+ user interface. And their party trick is we're basically an Open Router competitor, but we serve those same models up for roughly 40% off what Open Router is serving them up for. And the user interface of GM is A+, fantastic, could not be better. And I've not been able to say that about a lot of subnets until recently. And I'd say, maybe 10 of them have A+ excellent UIs now. Kind of none of them did the last time we spoke. So the game has been upped quite a bit. So very, very happy about that. Hippias is another one I love. They do a number of things now, but their main thrust is storage. So they provide decentralized storage, S3 compatible storage bins. Plus they have a Dropbox a desktop app, Dropbox like desktop app.
Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. And their storage costs 1/100th what all the competitors cost. Right. So significant price difference if you're doing a lot of storage, right? You're backing up a lot of machines, or I don't know, whatever you're doing, video. You're probably going to want to have a look at Hippias because you're going to save, 99%. That's a lot. Right. And Hippias is now also doing virtual machines with automated backup to the Hippias drive. And a lot of other subnets are using Hippias now because why wouldn't you? It's 99% off. Right. And
It's
also
ridiculous.
They take Tau.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So a lot of these
Ridiculous.
subnets also take Tau as payment. Yeah. So,
okay. How are they able to afford that though? I mean, at hundreds of the price, it's crazy. I'm assuming that's not where they're making their money.
Well, the margins are low, but they do have margins, right? So they're able to do that basically by again getting stranded storage from around the world, right? Depending on where you are, you have like old machines or you have cheap power. I don't know where these people are, but Hippias basically invites them all to mine with storage. And by the way, your files are encrypted, so whoever's doing it doesn't matter who they are; they still can't get at your stuff because you have to load like the Hippias software on your end to be a miner, and within that, everything's encrypted. So Amazon and all these other guys, they have colo facilities, they have employees, right? Google, they have employees, they have colo facilities. It's a very different level of thing, right? Whereas like Hippias is doing it Bitcoin style, right? Like again, if you go back to Bitcoin, right? Imagine Google bought Bitcoin, right? Like let's just say that's possible.
Okay.
And yeah, just pretend like it is, right? So your choice, if you're Google, you're like, well, I can either bring all the hash rate in-house, right? Because I have to produce the same hash rate and have it ever increasing the same way Bitcoin is doing right now. The Bitcoin mining network is doing right now. So in aggregate, that's going to cost me 15 billion with a B dollars per year. And that number's going to go up because the hash rate's going to go up year over year, right? Just like it has. So if I'm Google, proud owner of Bitcoin, I can pay $15 billion a year, or I can just do nothing, let the mining operation continue to run, and I get it for free, right? Like that's if you look at that, like that's the difference. If you're doing something mining style, you get a lot of stuff for free or very low cost compared to if you do it in house. That's how Hippias and all these other things are able to do what they're doing. Mining, it turns out, is the most cost-effective way ever invented to do anything, and that was one of the lessons of Bitcoin. It's a crazy
that's
lesson,
actually so
right?
interesting. Okay, so you're essentially saying that Bittensor makes mini Bitcoins. Essentially, it makes a bunch of projects that do Bitcoin-esque tasks. Essentially, that is so cool. I didn't think about it that way at all. Yeah.
Let's do Bitcoin again, but let's do it for storage. Let's do it for inference. Let's do it for decentralized training. Let's do it for biotech, right? That's what Bittensor is at its core. Nobody noticed how awesome the Bitcoin mining network itself was, because everybody was entranced with Bitcoins, right? But it turns out that's just one lesson. The mining side of it is another. Like, oh my god, and that was the brilliance of Const and Allah, is they looked at the mining side and said, wait, there's like a whole universe over here. Let's weaponize Bitcoin's mining side. Let's make it programmable and let's make it applicable to all these other things because, oh my God, it's insanely cost effective.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So the subnets also have to follow Bittensor's halving schedule, which is Bitcoin's halving schedule, because they're tied to Bittensor. So all these subnets are tied to Bittensor. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so we got to think of them as mini Bitcoins. So you're taking a stake in this early stage project with potentially limitless amounts of hash rate or whatever it is that they're trying to do, and you're just early on the network, so you're taking a stake. Okay, that's a new way to think about Bittensor. Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the last one we never touched. Conviction. Conviction was this like big drama back in May. This subnet owner decided to kind of go and who knows what he's doing, but he's probably in Dubai or in the Bahamas or something at this point. And someone needed to take over the subnet, but we didn't have a way to do that. And so Conviction recently came out. Const, I believe, now owns all 3 of the subnets that were affected, right? Correct. Yeah. And so we got this new trained model called Teutonic 1. According to Const, it was like 10x better than the last model that they built that was 7 times larger. Did you test it at all?
I've not tested it out. No. I'm watching the announcements come out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think they're just starting the training run now. They've proven
that
it can work.
They're doing the second one now. Yeah.
Yeah,
because I remember testing the first one, it was like complete slop. But the point is that it solved the problem with decentralized training.
It's not that the pig sings well; it's that the pig sings at all.
Yeah.
Before the first one, that's really the way to think of it, right? It is miraculous because before the first one, everybody was like, "This is impossible; it can't be done." The bandwidth, the coordination of the bandwidth between machines is the problem. You'll never overcome it.
Yeah,
and basically, the first one showed there was a path to overcoming it. Right. Which frankly, Const like pioneered a lot of that. That was like a lot of Const's thinking. Const kind of served that whole thing up on a silver platter to the previous owner, who shall remain nameless. It's like, who, like they say in Harry Potter, like,
He's like
who,
he
who shall not be named. Like Voldemort, whatever that guy's name is.
Yeah. We don't, you don't say that. You can't say that. But so we finally got ownership of the subnet. Immediately, people are going to say, but centralization. That was the big problem last time, according to this man who shall not be named. And so what steps is Const taking to, through Conviction, decentralize this subnet over time? Have you looked into that at all?
Well, I mean, conviction basically means that you, as the owner of the subnet, can't rug anyone else who basically buys your token, right? So what happened with he who shall not be named is he had you can argue whether what he did was illegal or not. I think there is some debatableness there. But without a doubt, for sure, he had asymmetric information and had been representing that he was the subnet, that he, his efforts were going to continue to build up this decentralized training rig, right? And he claimed that he was making a principled exit, right? Because it was Bittensor is too centralized. It's a centralization theater. And yet, because he had asymmetric information, he was able to drain the liquidity pool before making this announcement, before anybody else knew that he was making a principled exit, right? So whether he did or did not, he could. And conviction locking means that the next one of him can't, because they'll have to lock their tokens in a smart contract, and they won't. And when they unlock them, there's a decay period, which everyone will see because it's on the chain. So you can't just sort of surprise blitz the network with draining the liquidity pool like that person did.
So we fixed that rugging problem for Bittensor, at least that small little problem, because people are exploiting all kinds of things. But that problem we fixed.
That problem got solved. Yeah. So So I do think that is solved.
That's good.
And I do think that I don't think that centralizes. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's sort of that puts the power in the hands of the people, which is where it belongs.
And if people want Const to control it, then who cares? There's no problem there. The people choose who they want to rule over the subnet. Tom over at Actual Computer, he's doing stuff with Now's Research. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. He's over at their New York headquarters. He's doing a bunch of stuff there. They're also doing inference with CPUs. Like we've got CPUs and then we've got Green, which I was going to talk to you about. We talked before the podcast. They are powering through like through waste, through like animal waste is how they're powering their
They are.
compute. And then so we've got CPUs here, we've got NG that's doing power over at China and these other places, like so many different little things that are happening, all trying to solve the same problem.
Yeah, so actual like very interesting, right? So Tom is like this. He's a young guy, and he's got like crazy hair. So far so good, right? And his father and his grandfather were some of the key architects of the internet itself, right? So he's got legacy, and he showed a picture of himself. He was actually holding the first lithograph of the first
Oh, I saw that.
microprocessor
Yeah.
wafer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that Intel produced, right? It's like that thing is like an artifact of compu history, right? Like that's like the code of Hammurabi, like on the brick, right? Like he's got like the computer equivalent of that, right? So, but what they're doing is what Tom figured out was that very low power machines could do inference if you loaded them with the right software, and furthermore, you could cluster low powered and high powered machines together to create super inference, like sort of a neo cloud of inference. And this was extremely useful for people that did not want to pay for inference, that had a lot of compute just sort of lying around. You can go make your own sort of BBS of compute, if you will, to use like an early 90s term or a late 80s term. And you can give keys, you can hand out API keys to your employees or your friends, right? And only they can get into your little club of private inference, right? That you guys own and control. So these ragtag fugitive fleets of inference powered by actual are first of all available natively in Hermes agent, right? Because News Research, they co-locate with them in the office. So clearly they're friends and clearly they're talking. So the fact that actual inference is available on Hermes right now is really insane and really powerful, right? So eventually, actual is going to allow people who set up these neo cloud clusters not only to use them themselves, but when they're not using them, basically flip a switch and have them rent out their inference to some other people for subnet tokens. So that's where this is all going. Just so you know, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, I mean, last time I asked him, he's like, "I'm locked in." There's a reason he has crazy hair. He's more than locked in. So he's an
Yes.
OG pioneer of the internet, is what you're saying.
Both his father and his grandfather were, right? So he's like 21 or 22 or something.
Oh wow.
Really, he's
Okay.
really young, but it's really weird, dude. Like you know how old I am, right? Like, and I've been kicking around for a long time. And when I actually had coffee with Tom like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago at this point. When I first met him, I felt like I was talking to someone my age, but like the body was that of a 21-year-old, right? It was like someone who'd been de-aged. It was really strange because he knew all the same stuff I did. Like it was a very weird experience. And so I have a ton of respect for Tom. He has wisdom beyond his years for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know half the things you were saying when we were talking about the 80s. That's beyond my time.
Yeah,
I
you're
was
like,
just there
what the?
listening, like, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of great talent over at Bittensor. So I remember you had this big thesis beginning of the year. I was very hyped for it. I thought it was awesome. It was pretty much talking about this was Bittensor's first halving, technically. So it was like its Bitcoin moment. It's 2013 Bitcoin moment. Have you kind of changed from that? Do you still think we can have this like crazy $3,000 towel run by the end of this year? Or are we kind of moving the goalpost here?
Yeah, I think. I mean, what I think could happen is this: is I think because of the nature of what we're doing, the subnets are the heart of it, right? So if basically nothing has happened, like nothing has happened yet at all, in my opinion, like even though the subnet there's extreme advancement in a lot of the quality subnets in terms of development of product, in terms of revenue, in terms of this and that. We haven't had a breakout success yet, so quote unquote nothing has happened yet. And I think the first, we'll basically have a moment where the first subnet will go to $1 billion. And this is just me, this is not financial advice, just what I think. But I've seen it happen in Ethereum and other ecosystems before. So nothing is happening. All of a sudden, somebody spikes up out of nowhere to like $1 billion in valuation, and then people go, "Well, that's really interesting, but that was probably a fluke." And then it happens again in a short period of time. Now it's a trend. Now it's undeniable. So now a lot of heads start going squirrel, and they start looking at us and going, "I wonder if there's more of these things in these other 120, 126 subnets, right? There's 126 left. Let's go look at them. There's probably some more in there, right?" So let's make some bets. That's what I think happens. And I can't tell you exactly when that'll happen, but I think in the next 6 months, I think before the end of the year, we'll see the first one run. And I think once, and because subnet tokens are rehypothecated tau, when this activity starts happening, it just basically, if one subnet runs, it drags tau up with it, right? Just like the S&P 500 is dragged up by certain companies doing very well, right? We don't have as many companies as the S&P 500. They have 500. We have 128. So it takes sort of less motion for one of them to drag the whole thing up. And I think we'll have a couple that will. That's what I
And
think.
that's why the ecosystem is concentrating its efforts on the top to make sure that they succeed. And then once they succeed, they rise all tides. Okay, they lift all boats.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the optimizations that Const are making is like, look, we didn't know who the winners were going to be at first, right? And now we have kind of an idea, right? And we might be right, we might be wrong, but we think we have an idea. And it's like these 10 and then these 10 next, right? Like these 20 are sort of, one of these is our warrior. That's going to be the first warrior to go over the wall of Troy, right? And so we want to make sure that we're supporting them as much as we can, because that's what matters more than anything. More than anything, a couple of these guys running over the wall is what needs to happen for the entire ecosystem to succeed, and for us to get the respect, frankly, that we deserve as an ecosystem, right? So, but I think it will happen.
Yeah, I think it's a smart way to do it. Well, thank you so much for hopping on.